Well, hello again, and welcome to another episode of the Hyperion Adventures podcast. I'm Tom. As always, I'm with my wonderful, gorgeous, super smart, and Star Wars loving wife, Michelle.
Hi, honey. Thank you. Hi, everybody.
So good to have you with us. We are recording this episode on Sunday, August 18th, 2019. We are just a few days away from D23 Expo 2019.
I know.
I'm excited.
Oh, my God. It is tremendously exciting. It's hard to believe that it's already almost here.
Right. It's really close now. Matter of fact, all the reservations were made yesterday. We are going to be at all the big panels. We're so excited for that.
Yeah.
And we're going to start off right now by telling you should follow us along when we're at the D23 Expo 2019. We are going to be all over social media every single day. And that starts actually the day before because we are getting a preview of the expo floor.
Exciting, huh?
Yeah.
Yes. We're getting in Thursday and getting to, like you said, preview some things on the expo floor. And it just, every time I go to the website or read some things on social media about it, I just get so much, so very excited.
I can tell you can't even
Can't speak.
Welcome to my world. Welcome to my world.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if that's just the excitement or just my brain.
Right. So yes, anyway, you'll want to follow us on social media because we'll be reporting throughout the day, each day from the D23 Expo. And then each night we are going to be doing a wrap-up episode. Now next week isn't going to be our typical episode where we just do one long episode. We are going to do several small episodes, and I mean small, like 20, 30-minute episodes that just kind of wrap up what's happened at the D23 Expo each day. And that will start Thursday night. You'll definitely want to tune in for those.
Yeah, we know it's going to be fun out there, and we're going to love sharing that with everybody. I don't know. Yeah, like you said, they're going to be short because we're going to probably be energied out the evening, and we got to get back up early again for the next day of excitement. So very, very cool. And I did notice that all 3 days are totally sold out now.
Mm-hmm.
And so for those of you who've gotten your tickets, how fun.
I know. And by the way, if you do have your tickets and you are going to be on the expo floor, look for us out there. We will be walking the expo floor regularly. We want to say hi to you. If you follow us on social media or if you are, of course, a listener regularly to the show, come by, say hi. We do have a little trinket to give you. It's just a little a logo magnet that we have if you want it. But more than anything else, we just want to get the chance to meet you.
Yeah, we really do like to interact with people, and we love people who are listeners or who are followers of ours on social media. It's fun getting to connect faces with names and things like that, and we have such a great community out there. And so, yeah, we are looking forward to hopefully meeting some folks.
And so if you're out there and you see us, come up, say hello. If you want to find pictures of us, we have a few online. I put out a picture this week of kind of previewing that we are going to be out there. You can see what we look like out there. You got the cute little redhead and the big clunky oafy guy with a beard. That's me. We'll usually be together out there on the floor. So take a look for us. But even if you're not on the floor, please follow along on social media. And the best way to do that is to follow us on Twitter at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Hyperion Adventures Podcast.
Right. Now, I'm really also looking forward to today's show because we're getting to talk about one of our favorite topics and with somebody who is one of our favorite people.
That's right. Now, we have lots of stuff for you on today's show, and that includes a new Walt Disney World ticket offer for those of you that may be a little bit more of late risers. Also, your chance to join the Disney Parks Moms panel is coming. We'll tell you about that. And some Disney four-legged friends are getting a new home. But let's get to today's topic.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what Michelle was just talking about. We are continuing our Star Wars Remembered series, our countdown to the Rise of Skywalker, episode 9, the end of the Skywalker saga. Each month, we are going through all the Star Wars films, beginning with episode 1, going in Star Wars chronological order. And today we are moving into the original trilogy.
Yeah.
That's right. Star Wars episode 4, A New Hope.
Somewhere in space, this may all be happening right now. 20th Century Fox and George Lucas, the man who brought you American Graffiti, now bring you An adventure unlike anything on your planet. Star Wars.
Here they come. Coming in too fast!
The story of a boy, a girl, and a universe. It's a big, sprawling space saga of rebellion and romance. It's a spectacle, light years ahead of its time.
I am C-3PO, human cyborg relations, and this is my counterpart, R2-D2.
Hello.
No sauces, no sauces!
It's an epic of heroes.
Good luck.
And villains. And aliens from 1,000 worlds. Star Wars, 1 billion years in the making, and it's coming to your galaxy this summer.
So yes, Star Wars. Well, it's just called Star Wars when that trailer came out. That awesome trailer. So funny. Of course, later retitled Episode 4, A New Hope. And as always for our Star Wars Remembered series, we are joined by our great friend, Rob LeBerry from the Jedi Temple Archives podcast. Rob, thanks again for joining us.
Tom, Michelle, thank you guys so much for having me on the podcast.
So good to have you with us once again. We rely on you for all things Star Wars, but especially the one that started it all.
I know. It's
That, by the way, that trailer is still only the third worst Star Wars film of all time.
Right. I think that trailer is amazing, actually. I've seen it before a long time ago, and I was like, getting it back for this episode, and I'm just chuckling away at it because it's hard to believe. You can see when you're watching this trailer as to why this movie really didn't have a big impact going into theaters to begin with. And we'll go through that as we discuss this movie. But it was just really, really funny stuff. A boy, a girl, a galaxy.
All with the psycho music playing in the background.
So great. None of John Williams' score.
I know.
So good. Anyway, so let's get into Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. This film debuted on May 25th, 1977. And to date myself, I was 8 years old when this movie debuted. And oh my goodness, it just opened up a whole new world for me. It was incredible.
Yeah, I remember going as a kid with my older brother. I don't really remember if it was because I was a cool kid and, we did get along most of the time, or my mom made him take me. But anyways, I remember it just being the most phenomenal movie of its time, and I know people say that all the time. And I just really feel so honored, actually, that I got to see it in that kind of an experience. Right.
I'm sure we'll get more into that. Rob, your thoughts, right, on the opening of Star Wars, later named A New Hope.
Yeah, my parents had taken me to see it at the drive-in theater. I was not quite 4 years old yet, and I still remember sitting in the back seat of the car with that, kind of tinny drive-in theater speaker hanging from the window. And it's kind of funny because it was my dad that dragged us all out to go see it. And, it's the same father who now looks at me like, I don't know, why are you so into the Star Wars stuff? But it all goes back to him. I'm hanging this on him.
There you go. So let's get into this film. Really going into it, and as you could understand from listening to that trailer, there really was not much hype for this film. Matter of fact, there was no hype for this film going into it. We've gone through these movies and talked about hype going in. Many have had an enormous amount of hype. This movie had none of it. As a matter of fact, when it first was put into theaters, fewer than 40 theaters actually ordered this film. As a matter of fact, 20th Century Fox made theaters agree to show it if they wanted to show a film that was called The Other Side of Midnight, which was a highly anticipated film still, they not a lot of them picked it up. Star Wars debuted, as we talked about, on the 25th. It was on a Wednesday in fewer than 32 theaters.
Wow.
And 8 more on Thursday and Friday. Yet it immediately broke a box office records, effectively becoming one of the first blockbuster films, and Fox accelerated plans to broaden its release after that. It was crazy. This film completely came out of nowhere. No one expected anything out of this movie. George Lucas didn't even expect anything in this movie. He wasn't at the debut. He was off away with Steven Spielberg having a vacation, and they're planning up, ideas for what eventually would become Indiana Jones.
Right.
So just incredible stuff. Michelle, your thoughts?
Yeah, same kind of thing. I don't recall, if there was a lot of hype or not, but I don't believe that there was. But yeah, I mean, kind of going back to what I was saying before in terms of feelings, I'm trying to make a comparison to maybe earlier, times now, that if somebody had seen something, and the only things that I could think of, possibly Jurassic Park, maybe, and I know this is totally different, but in terms of the wow factor, it was Toy Story.
Toy Story might be. Jurassic Park, it was anticipated because it was a book that people loved,
right?
That they kind of anticipated. They looked at this film. It was Spielberg behind it, so
right.
Kind of some interest there. But Rob, your thoughts on this film pretty much coming out of nowhere?
Yeah, again, I was pretty young, so I didn't really have a lot of awareness of whether there was hype or not. Clearly, I think that it's pretty well established that there wasn't. It was pretty much an unexpected blockbuster. And even from George Lucas, he never really expected this to be a giant blockbuster film. And I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more as we continue on in this episode.
Absolutely. So let's get to the cast. And really, this cast was mostly a bunch of relatively unknowns. They really had not appeared in a lot of big things, not a lot of things you would know. Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, his first really big role, right. And really played it off. I think that the trio really made this movie. Harrison Ford as Han Solo. He had appeared actually in George Lucas's American Graffiti, which is funny that from the George Lucas, the director
right.
who brought you American Graffiti in the trailer, is like that would never be known as that again. He had done a little bit of this, and then of course Carrie Fisher, who came on and played Princess Leia Organa. The big three, still in everybody's hearts even today.
Right.
Michelle, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. They were real newcomers to this kind of a genre for sure, and even all the supporting characters too, with everybody in it. But you're right; those three really solidified the movie and the heart that came to it.
Absolutely. Rob, your thoughts?
Certainly the three primary actors and actresses that made up the core of this cast were kind of the lightning in the bottle that I think they've always struggled to recapture. And it's not something that you can really plan out. The casting calls for this film went on for quite some time, and it was up in the air really until right at the end who were going to be selected to play these parts. But looking back at it, I really don't think you can argue with any of the selections that were made.
There's no way you can argue with any of those selections that are made. They are, if you look back at it, you're like, how could they have ever thought of anybody else playing those roles? Many great actors tried out for Han Solo, including like Kurt Russell was one of the ones that tried out for it. Lots of big name actors that very well tried out for it, but George Lucas settled on Harrison to be the role, and I think deservedly so, and just played it amazingly. The few actors that you may have known from other films, Alec Guinness, who was classically trained, been out in many, many great films for years and years. Of course, he plays Obi-Wan Kenobi, and even though he wasn't exactly crazy about this film, or at least from what we hear, he played that role excellently.
Yeah, he really did. And, you wouldn't know that. I don't know how authenticated it is of some of the things he said about it. He apparently did have some understanding that it was unique and it might make some money because of how he got his his deal and pay out of that. But yeah, it was good to have an anchor there of somebody I think that audiences could understand as having somebody who was a leader or viewed as a leader, not just because he was an experienced actor, but because of maybe some of the roles he had played in the past.
Right. Rob, your thoughts?
Well, I think that a big part of the success of the main three characters with Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill, and Carrie Fisher can really be attributed to Sir Alec Guinness. He was, everyone who knew him and who was there. And I read quite a bit about this film. There's a great book by Jonathan Rinsler who put together making of books for each of the original trilogy films for sure. It's talked really clearly in that book about the fact that he brought out the professionalism in these fairly young actors and actresses. And they certainly kind of raised their standard when he was around. And when he wasn't around, they kind of goofed off a little bit more.
Right.
So I can't say that I blame any of them. They were all pretty young at the time.
Right.
But he definitely, I think, was a big reason why the quality of the acting in this film still stands up today.
Yeah. I think that's definitely the case. And yeah, I mean, how could you not? I mean, this guy has been around, Bridge Over the River Kwai and so many great films that you got to show respect for the guy. But these actors were all relatively young as well, so you could see why when he wasn't on set, they're like, let's have a little more fun. I mean, I think there were some classic outtakes where they're in the ship bay on the Death Star, and they're supposed to be firing their blasters, and they're pew 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 pew. They're just having a good time. So very fun. Moving on, another actor that was not as well known as Alec Guinness, but had been around and done some things was Peter Cushing, who played Grand Moff Tarkin, and he's got kind of that menacing, role of, they didn't really have the Emperor yet, and Darth Vader was, of course, the big bad of this, but Peter Cushing has that subtle evil part to him, cool and collected, and I just found his character fascinating.
Yeah, he looked like somebody you wouldn't want to cross. I mean, he didn't even have to say anything, and you kind of had that feeling.
Yeah, anybody who's got Vader in check, he's got to be pretty strong anyway. Rob, any thoughts on Peter Cushing?
Well, I mean, he did a masterful job of playing Grand Moff Tarkin, but it's maybe not so well known that a lot of the menace that he exuded while he was on screen was because the boots that they had provided him were far too small for his feet. So the scenes where they were actually in the shot, he was in agony, and then they were basically trying to not shoot his feet in a lot of the scenes because he was basically just walking around without boots on.
Yeah, probably. It was one of my fun facts I was going to bring up later. Actually, when he wasn't wearing
trying to ruin the show early.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Rob. Always jumping ahead on, ahead of us. We're very good.
It shows how organic our show is.
He actually apparently wore comfy slippers for much of the scenes where his feet didn't have to be shown. So you can just imagine your comfiest slippers. I'm figuring, something like, big old bear claw slippers or something. Or bunny slippers. You just see Grand Moff Tarkin walking around with bunny ear slippers as we go through. So
I think Yoda feet would be appropriate.
True. Or maybe he was a visionary and they were Mickey shoes.
Yeah,
Mickey
he knew.
slippers.
He knew ahead of time.
Eventually.
There we go. He knew ahead of time.
Sorry.
Moving on throughout the cast, Anthony Daniels played C-3PO and has played that role in so many different movies and television shows and everything else since this point, and has really become very famous for it. And again, another actor who just did a masterful job with that role.
Yeah, totally. And he brought a lot of, it was one of the first movies, I would say, that brought heart to a droid,
And brought out some of the biggest laughs, as a matter of fact, too. Rob, any thoughts on Anthony Daniels?
Yeah, when he's all in one piece, certainly he did an excellent job of playing the professor. It's an iconic character within Star Wars, so I can't imagine it without C-3PO and certainly R2-D2 in it. But again, we'll probably get into it later on in this broadcast about some of the trials and tribulations that he went through playing that part.
Oh yeah, for sure. Others like Kenny Baker ended up playing R2-D2, and You may not even think of it, because it's just basically this little canister droid running around or rolling around. And yeah, Kenny Baker was in a lot of those scenes as R2, as he was for many, many years. And but it's funny because a lot of times apparently the actors would even forget that he was even in there.
During lunch break.
Poor guy, they're in the desert in this heat, and he's got to be in this thing. And it's terrible.
Yeah,
but,
I couldn't imagine.
He fulfilled the role very well. Don't you agree, Michelle?
Yeah, totally. And, nowadays I know that they can do so much more with technology, and, that somebody actually did that is just impressive.
So much. Rob, do you have any thoughts on Kenny Baker at all?
Well, I mean, I would certainly say that this is the movie where he was most truly R2-D2 because of all the problems they had with that particular droid and the electronics of it not working properly. So he was usually the one responsible for actually turning the head and trying not to strangle himself with all the cords that were in there with him. But this was the film where R2's performance was most purely Kenny Baker.
Right. I mean, speaking of that, the problem is if you watch the scene, it's just right after he gets the plans from Princess Leia, and then C-3PO tells him to come on, and he's kind of rolling towards him. You kind of see at the end where he's kind of veering off to the right, and they edit it away just before like he's going to smash into the wall. So you could tell that they were having some problems trying to kind of direct this droid as obviously the technology was moving on, and so much technology got developed in this film, and we'll discuss that, I'm sure, as well. Darth Vader was actually portrayed by two different people. As far as the acting role, that was David Prowse, who played it. Didn't have his voice used for it. And then, of course, the iconic James Earl Jones voice for Darth Vader, that just booming. It just couldn't be more perfect.
Right.
I think you agree, Michelle.
Oh, most definitely. That was the best choice, and, I don't think it could be the same without having him play that voice. Right.
And I think to this day still, known as one of the greatest villains of all time. Rob, your thoughts on Darth Vader?
I've actually had the fortune to meet and see David Prowse in person. He used to do a speaking tour. He probably still does, where he talks a lot about the process of making Star Wars, and he's got a lot of angst about some of the things that transpired. Certainly, one of them being one of the early issues that he had was the fact that they brought in James Earl Jones to voice Darth Vader, and he kind of later got cut out of future movies for different reasons, but. The combination of having, someone with his physical size and presence in that black armor, and then the voice, as you mentioned, with James Earl Jones, was just the perfect voice. It's so iconic, and I wouldn't want to imagine Darth Vader without the voice of James Earl Jones.
I completely agree with that. It just wouldn't seem the same. I mean, maybe they would have found somebody that could have done a great job with it, but it's just hard to imagine because James Earl Jones is so iconic.
Perfect fit.
Yeah. Rounding out the cast was the gentle giant himself, 7'2", Peter Mayhew, God rest his soul, playing the other gentle giant, Chewbacca, and I mean the mannerisms, the heart, while still showing menace when he needs to. Chewbacca was just perfect in this and all the movies going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and we saw a lot of his character being developed in this film. I've just loved watching it develop more and more within other films of Star Wars. But yeah, here he really, like you said, his mannerisms were fabulous. I mean, you could tell he just totally enveloped that character.
Rob, I know you have some thoughts on Peter Mayhew.
Yeah, I mean, he was an incredible actor. He certainly imbued, his spirit into the essence of who Chewbacca was. And when you really look at the early scripts and kind of how Chewbacca developed as a character, it doesn't sound like it would really work. But you've got this amazing actor. Certainly, he had the physical stature to play a Wookiee. But it was really his mannerisms and just kind of the way he came across on screen that made Chewbacca so lovable.
Yeah. It was just, it was incredible how he was able to get that across there. I mean, it wasn't, it was just growling mostly, and it wasn't him doing it. It was this amalgamation of various different animal calls that were kind of put together to make it. But just the look in his eyes, the gestures, everything about it, you just love. Everybody to this day loves Chewbacca, and Peter Mayhew is to thank for that. So, I mean, I don't really need to say this, but we'll go over a quick synopsis of the movie just because that's what we do for all of these. But the film follows a farm boy who always wanted something more and sees himself suddenly thrust in the middle of an unexpected adventure. He learns that there's much more to the galaxy than he ever knew. And along the way, he meets a couple of wisecracking droids, a teacher, and a mentor, a bit of a scoundrel, quote, space bear, end quote, and a take charge princess on the way to saving the galaxy. I think that, just spells it out almost as well as that trailer did.
Yeah. I don't even think I have a comment for that, sweetie. I'm hoping Rob does.
I'm just flinching in the corner right now, just thinking about that trailer. But again, I would agree. I don't think most people would need a rundown. Although it's interesting, I still run into people who say I've never seen Star Wars, and I immediately refer them for psychiatric evaluation. But, it's again, it was a perfect movie, but it's so interesting how it evolved. If you, again, read the Jonathan Rensler book and kind of see the process of George Lucas coming up with this story and how it evolved over the course of approximately 2.5 years while it was being made, it's incredible that it turned out how it did, and then it was such a hit. And it's just proof of how difficult it is to come up with a story that's going to capture people's imagination the way that this film did.
Yeah, it really is interesting because there was very little marketing, if any at all, for this film. It was one of the only films that word of mouth made it, and it made it big really, really quickly. Like lines were going around blocks. I waited in those lines going around blocks to see, because this is in the day when, theaters were one single theater. Maybe you get a duplex or whatever they call it, that they had two theaters in there, but you didn't have like the big, 14, 20 theaters like you do today. So they would have these huge lines waiting for each one because this film was so big. It really is incredible that this word of mouth about this incredible film had such an impact on people.
Right. I mean, just even as a kid, being able to appreciate the uniqueness of it, not so much just the story, but the uniqueness and, the crawl at the beginning and, the diversity in these kind of characters that we've never seen anything, like that. They are, different, but they are characters that we can, kind of understand and appreciate.
Everybody relates to a character or another. Some people related more to Han, some people related to Luke, some more to, Princess Leia, of course. But, everybody kind of had that part within them as they watched this film. Your thoughts, Rob?
Well, I mean, if you look at the time that this film came out, I mean, this was a period of time where there was a lot of dark films coming out, a lot of kind of heavy and, political films. And this was, that was the type of film that George Lucas was into making as well. And this was really kind of a challenge from Steven Spielberg to see if he could make a film that was going to be positive and upbeat, and it kind of followed the same general idea of what he had done with American Graffiti in terms of a story that was going to be really about coming of age of a younger person, and the way that it came together, it was inspiring, it was exhilarating, it was adventure, it was all the swashbuckling films and TV shows that Lucas had watched growing up and the things that had appealed to him when he was younger. And he was able to take that and craft it into a story that really spoke to the current generation. So it's an incredible amalgamation, I guess, of a lot of different things that just was the right film at the right time for the right group of people.
Right. Well, it's a good point, Rob. I mean, think about where we were in our country's history at 1977 when this film came out. I mean, we weren't that far away from the Vietnam War ending, and our country was kind of torn apart by that. Watergate had just recently happened, the whole fiasco with that. So, I mean, we were just kind of in a weird state as a country, and you kind of needed this bit of fantasy to kind of break you away from what was kind of the reality of what was going on in our country. Anyway, I just want to get a little bit into how this film kind of developed, where it came from. So at the Cannes Film Festival, Cannes, however you call it, can, whatever. Following the completion of George Lucas's first film, THX 1138, 1138, whatever you want to call it, he was granted a 2-film development deal with United Artists. The 2 films were American Graffiti and an untitled space opera that was supposed to be inspired by Flash Gordon. So that's what's his thought to begin with going into this. Lucas went to United Artists and showed them the script for American Graffiti, and they passed on the film, which was then picked up by Universal Pictures. United Artists also passed on Lucas's space opera concept, which he shelved for the time being. After United Artists declined on to budget the film, Lucas and producer Gary Kurtz presented the film treatment to Universal Pictures. Of course, as I just talked about, they did American Graffiti.
Right.
However, it rejected its options on the film because the concept was, quote, a little strange, end quote. And it said that Lucas should follow American Graffiti with more consequential themes.
So he shouldn't have let out with that a brother and sister kissed, right?
Might have not been the way to go. It might have been also why Disney turned that down, by the way, just so you know. But Lucas and Kurtz persisted in securing a studio to support the film. Lucas pursued Alan Ladd Jr., who was the head of course, 20th Century Fox. And in the end of 1973, he completed a deal to write and direct the film. Although Ladd didn't grasp the technical side of the project, he believed that Lucas was talented. Lucas later stated that Ladd, quote, invested in me. He did not invest in the movie, end quote. The deal gave Lucas $150,000 to write and direct the film. American Graffiti's positive reception afforded Lucas the leverage necessary to renegotiate the deal with Ladd and request the sequel rights to the film in August of 1973. For Lucas, this deal protected Star Wars' unwritten segments and, of course, the merchandising profits, which were a big deal for George Lucas. So that's kind of what led into the beginnings of having this film go through. And as you can tell, they went through many different studios and no one got it. They didn't understand the concept of this. How is this going to work? I think as Rob was talking about, this was much more of a time where everything is more reality based. Everything is focused politically on war and on different things that were going on in our world. And this fantasy that no one could kind of understand from the concept of it just had tough, finding a road into these studios.
Yeah. And that would make sense. I mean, first of all, it was so different. So, no matter how great of a storyteller you are, that would be something that would be difficult to try to translate to, a group of executives to try to say, yeah, this makes sense and we totally get it, because there wasn't anything to compare it with.
Right. Completely agree. Rob, I'm sure you have some more details or some more interesting information on what led into this film being made.
Yeah, I mean, certainly up until the point where he got turned down at the Cannes Film Festival by Universal, I believe it was, the idea that he had was to buy the rights to Flash Gordon. And so it kind of got to the point, not only could he not buy the rights to Flash Gordon, but, the fact that he had been denied by multiple studios with his initial idea of kind of turning an existing property into a film is really kind of what sent him on a road to creating his own, original film. And again, as you said, he got turned down by everybody, which I think is a big part of what fed into his dislike of the studio system as time went on. And you also had mentioned, the THX 1138 film that was his first professional film that he did after getting out of college. And they had just formed American Zoetrope at that point. And that film crashing and burning was basically what caused American Zoetrope to lose their deal and essentially go bankrupt. So he had a lot of failure, both with his professional career, with his first film coming out of college, and then, this idea that he had for the space opera film that he wanted to film, not being able to successfully market that to anybody, really went a long way toward developing him into the person that he was and kind of becoming more of an independent, trying to take the studios out of the picture and being able to have more creative liberties for the types of films that he wanted to make.
Yeah, completely agree with you in that regard. It was, an interesting situation, but understandable. I mean, as a kid out of college, his first film bombed. I mean, luckily American Graffiti came through and was a relative success, and people enjoyed that film very much. Otherwise, who knows if this film is ever made?
Right.
It had to jade you a little bit if you're in his shoes.
Right. And you would think that Hollywood, because of the success of American Graffiti, would say that was successful. It even spun off a TV show. Let's do more of that. And, here's Lucas saying, well, no, I want to do something different.
Agreed. Anyway, so let's get to the movie itself. And all I'll say about this movie is that there are so many scenes that strike a chord with you in so many different ways. And we'll start right off the beginning of this film when there are no credits. It was a big deal that Lucas actually had to bargain, I believe, with the Screen Actors Guild, or
I think he had to pay a penalty or something
because of the fact that he didn't put any credits at the beginning. It went right into the film, into the scroll that we see, the crawl,
right.
And you're like, this is like, again, already off the bat, this is like something you've really never seen. I mean, he did take this off of the Flash Gordon serials to begin with, but really in a film you'd never really seen this, and it's telling you, setting the stage for what's about to happen, so you know your place right off the beginning. It was just a fascinating way to start.
It was fascinating. One, just how unique it looked. I still remember to this day thinking, episode 4, what? Have I missed something? Was I supposed to see something before I came to this? I was so confused. That doesn't take much, but but yeah, that opening was just caught you right away. It was riveting.
Right. Rob, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, John Williams stands alone, I think. One of the greatest film composers ever. But again, the interesting thing about this particular film is that at the time, the disco music was more in tune with what a lot of the films were going with, and the classical compositions were not really heavily in use. And so Lucas choosing to go with the classic composer. Again, he talks a lot about the fact that he always considered this a silent film, not in the sense that there was no dialogue, but the sense that the music was really going to drive the story. And John Williams was obviously the perfect choice for that, because his music and the score of the film certainly does drive a lot of the action. It kind of informs you what you should be thinking or feeling at a given point, and is just the perfect complement. I don't think there's a piece of music within Star Wars that people don't catch themselves humming at some point in their life.
Right, and that led right into the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
That and the crawl, the scroll. Right off the bat, it just, you knew you were in for something. And then that followed by the next big scene, which we were on Rob's podcast, the Jedi Temple Archives podcast recently, and we were talking about our favorite Star Wars moments throughout the entire film. And this was definitely one of mine, because it was something you'd never seen before. It set the stage for the entire film. And that is when, the Tantive 4, Princess Leia's, it's not her ship, but she's on that ship, and, followed closely behind by the giant Star Destroyer, and it was like nothing you'd ever seen before. Your jaw just dropped immediately. It was an incredible way to start this film.
It was. You knew you were into for something very, I keep saying this, different or unique, but something big. You knew this was so going to keep you engaged the entire film.
Right. Rob?
And that Star Destroyer is actually still flying across the screen as we speak.
It's true. I still think of Spaceballs, where they have this Star Destroyer that goes on for it's like 10 minutes across the screen. All right, but that's it. It also set it. Just that little scene set up, the rebellion, this tiny little ship versus the Empire, which is this giant, massive ship. And just an incredible way to start the film.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you go on from there, and of course there's this quick battle. You find Darth Vader menacing as everything, Princess Leia looks like she does fight back some, but she looks like, okay, she's really timid until she speaks with Darth Vader. Like, she's not intimidated by him at all,
Right.
So that's another thing that I don't think you saw a lot of in the movies.
Right, yeah. I mean, her having that ability to, well, not just him, but anybody that she was talking to on screen. She was going to command the screen, and she was going to show, she was in command. She was the princess. She knew she had authority.
It put the princess, the princess thought of what the princess was going to be right on your ear, right from the beginning of the film. Rob.
Well, I mean, certainly the spunk of Princess Leia, I guess for lack of a better term, was one of the hallmarks of this picture. Mm-hmm. We just rewatched it last night, not that it was necessary. And, the number of wisecracks she makes at Luke and Han's expense it probably defies your ability to count it. No one's going to turn that into a drinking game anytime soon, I don't think. Again, it goes back to what we talked about. The spirit of those three main characters really just imbued the whole movie and is a huge part of why it was successful.
Right. There's no question about it. I'm not going to recount every single scene, but I want to go through.
Wow, we're going to have a really long episode.
Well, there are so many key scenes in this that I do want to go through several of them. We go to Tatooine. The scene where Luke comes out, his uncle has just told him, we need you to stay here. You can't go to the academy now. And he walks out and he's so disappointed. And John Williams' score hits and he's up there looking over the two suns setting. And it's just every young boy's dream that always wanted to go do something different. When we were on your show, Rob, I compared it to, there's a thing out there and we saw this, I think it was in the Waking Sleeping Beauty movie where they talked about how in every musical there's like some song that's like the third song in, the fourth song in, where the hero or the heroine is there, and there's a song where it's basically the I want song, what the dreams are, and that was the I want song of the original Star Wars films of A New Hope.
Right, most definitely. And I know you're saying young guy, but I think young people, they have a feeling of what they want and longing for something that's not a part of their life yet, but that scene really captured that so wonderfully. But like you said, the music is what really made that, brought the emotion to that scene.
The music, the cinematography, everything put together, it's incredible. Rob, your thoughts?
Well, and it's certainly a very emotional scene very early in the film, and even without any dialogue whatsoever, exactly what Luke is thinking and what he's feeling. The interesting thing about that particular track, Binary Sunset, is that, and you can probably find it online as well, but that particular cue, they came out with a 4 CD original soundtrack anthology set, a box set, and if you listen to that particular cue on that particular box set, it is much longer than the music you hear in the film, and it's because there is an Easter egg hidden in that track in the sense that the entire end of that track is the scoring session for the main theme, and you can hear them in the scoring session working through the various iterations of the opening trumpet blasts and what works and what didn't, and them trying to find the perfect version of that main theme for Star Wars within that particular track on the CD.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. Interesting. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's why we have Rob on. He brings good stuff like that.
Yeah.
Especially, I know Rob loves the music of Star Wars so much. So little tidbits like that. Fascinating stuff. Moving on. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we're going to skip over here, but we get to, of course, to Michelle's favorite scene from this film, and that is, of course, the cantina at Mos Eisley, and all the characters there, and the band, and everything that happens in there. That is Michelle's favorite. I'm just going to let Michelle talk about it because that's her favorite scene.
And I mean, and it's just corny and geeky, but it is just funny and it's fun, and the music. I don't know, nothing to compare it to, but I just think it's just so funny and makes me want to have a party in that cantina.
Well,
with that band.
That's why we go to Oga's, so we can sort of have that party.
Band.
You want that band? Well, DJ Rex does play their music.
Does do a good job of that.
Rob, the cantina scene, your thoughts?
Well, I mean, certainly this within the film, most people had seen TV shows or serials at that time that had, spaceships and some of these elements that Lucas had worked into the film up until that point. But that cantina scene was really the first time where you realized that, you're not in Kansas anymore.
Right.
It's these different aliens and this completely alien feel to the place. And the realism, again, one of the things that made Star Wars so successful is everything wasn't all clean and neat. It was grimy and used and dirty, and it felt like a lived in world, and no place was that more evident than in the cantina. So, and then on top of it, some of the confrontations that they have in there, meeting Han Solo and Chewbacca. This was one of the ones that when we did the series of our top 5 iconic moments within Star Wars on the Jedi Temple Archives podcast, my wife was talking about this one as well, the whole initial meeting of Han Solo. And, it is one of those scenes that the film would have been completely different without it in there.
I think Michelle takes a special affront to the fact that, we don't serve their kind in here to those droids. I know how much she loves droids. And what are you doing? That's so racist, so droidist.
It's funny that you mentioned, Oga's Cantina, because that's the first thing that popped into my head. I've seen some videos of how rockin' that place can get when the music's up and the bartenders and some of the guests in there are kind of bopping and hopping to the beat. So it's cool that they're trying to develop that same kind of environment where you really feel like you're, as Michelle said, in the middle of a party.
Right.
Yeah, it really is. It does. Yeah. I can't wait for we're just a few weeks away from you getting out to Disneyland. We're going to go to Oga's Cantina with you, and it's going to be a lot of fun. We're very excited.
I had my chance today. I could have been
That's true.
That's true. At the annual pass holder preview, but I'm much happier with the idea that I'm going to get to experience it with my wife and with you guys out in California.
Oh,
and
cool.
it's going to be a blast.
We appreciate you sacrificing that for us, but also, of course, always for the children.
for the children, and because I don't want anyone to feel like a jerk.
That's right.
Oh man,
it's perfect. Anyway, moving on. Another interesting scene is the destruction of Alderaan, because I don't think you see this big. Actually, you see some clips of the Death Star to begin with, but I don't know what we know about this thing. Right. What is it? They call it the Death Star, whatever. But to actually see it blow up a planet and right in front of Leia, who is of course from there, and it was actually a very impactful scene and a very important scene to just prove, look how big this is and how deadly this is going to be, and it sets up a lot the drama that's going to come as we move along to the third act.
Right, and that's one of the scenes where you really see her emotions change of feeling like, hey, you're not going to intimidate me or anything like that, to where, holy crap, what's going to happen here? This is not good.
Yeah. Rob, any thoughts on that?
Well, and it gives the movie a feeling like there are actual stakes to be won or lost. You don't see a whole lot of places where they're willing to annihilate an entire planet and its people. As my wife reminds me all the time, that it's a perfect example of just how dedicated to the rebellion Princess Leia is, because despite the fact that she has her parents, her family, her friends, her entire world get destroyed right in front of her eyes, she is unerringly focused on defeating the Empire and making the rebellion victorious.
Yeah, she gives the false rebel base, an old rebel base where they used to be, as far as we're trying to stop them from doing this, but of course, as we know, it did not work. But.
And she's comforting Luke. When they do escape the Death Star, he loses Obi-Wan, someone he's known for a very short period of time. She's lost her entire planet, but she's comforting him.
Yeah,
that's a very good point. Yeah.
Good point. So I'm going to derail us here a
little
bit, because you've skipped over a very iconic moment in the film. Is when they were first approached the cantina, and Obi-Wan, these aren't the droids.
It's our first real look at the use of the Force.
Yeah,
you're right. That's a good point. I should have put that in there as well. Yes, and it was a hilarious moment for one thing, and it just shows you that there was some good comedy always buried within Star Wars and some of the seriousness of it. There was some good comedy, but it was our first look at a little bit of what a skilled Force user could do.
Right. And it was like, what just happened?
Right.
How did he do that?
Do you have
and now it's buried within a bunch of bad CGI.
I know.
Well, we're not going to get into the special edition here. At least not very much, but yes.
Exactly.
So anyway, eventually, obviously, Luke, Han, Obi-Wan, Chewie, they're trying to make their way to Alderaan. However, there is no Alderaan left. When they get sucked into basically having to go to the Death Star. And the interesting thing from this, and I'm sure Rob will have many components to this, where these are a lot of these themes are brought from other movies and other possibilities. One of the interesting things about this one is that this is very much we're storming the castle. Okay, the Death Star is the castle. Darth Vader is the Dark Knight. They have the princess hidden away in a tower somewhere within the castle, and they have to rescue the princess and bring her out. And it's very much the theme of this. I think it's very blatant that it's the theme, even with the Dark Knight there. But there are so many things in regards to this whole film. I'm sure, Rob, you have some comments on some of that.
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the things that came out as Lucas was putting this film together was he kind of didn't have a lot of direction in terms of how to structure the story, and he eventually came across Joseph Campbell and his work, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, and it's all about the hero's journey, and that's also kind of one of the structures that they use within this film. It's this young, idealistic person who has a call to adventure, and they deny it, and then they meet their mentor, and then they lose their mentor, and they progress and fall back, and then finally rise to the occasion the final time. And so that entire structure was both used within the film overall, although I totally agree. I mean, certainly the storm in the castle, good luck storming the castle, boys. Was an element with the Death Star attack, but there were some tropes that George Lucas kind of used when he created this film, and certainly they were very, very successful in terms of the reception it got from the fans.
Yeah, definitely. So, they're on the Death Star, they're saving the princess, although she does a pretty good job of helping save herself,
right,
with a little bit of their aid. Obi-Wan Kenobi, meanwhile, is on his own journey, and we don't know this at the time, but it's more impactful now, squaring off
right
with his old apprentice. I mean, he does say it's my old apprentice, but you don't realize how impactful that is until later on as you learn more about
right
it. And sacrifices himself essentially to help Luke. If you strike me down, I will become more powerful than you could ever possibly imagine.
Right.
Just an incredible scene, and the face of Luke when he sees Obi-Wan, even though, like you said, you've known him for a very short time, or at least really known him for a very short
right
time. It was very impactful in many regards.
Right. I mean, and actually, for Luke, that was the only person in this whole group that he knew. I mean, like you said, he hadn't known him for a long time. I mean, he'd known of him for, sounds like, a lot of his life. But really, now he's in with a bunch of people he never really knew beforehand. And what are they facing? And they're getting shot at. And it had to have a lot of different emotional components to it.
Yeah. Rob, any thoughts?
Well, the interesting thing with Alec Guinness is that, when they first started shooting the film, the plan was never for Obi-Wan to die. And that kind of created a situation where they were filming, and when Lucas made the decision that he was going to have Alec Guinness or Obi-Wan die within the film, that ended up being a situation where he had to go sit down with Alec Guinness and kind of break the news to him and tell him he was still going to be used, just in a little bit different way. So we talked a little bit before about the fact that, Alec Guinness and his involvement with the movie, he went more for a percentage of the take as opposed to a straight salary. And you certainly can't argue with his business savvy there. But that was just one of the many pitfalls, I guess, that Lucas had to navigate with this film. If you do any reading or research on the movie and understand just how many times this almost didn't get made, it's really mind blowing. Not only that it got put out, but that it became as big a hit as it did.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. So then we move on, and there's the escape from the Death Star, the Millennium Falcon flying away from the Death Star, and the fight scene that George Lucas, I think we've talked about this in the past, or maybe we just talked about it on the Jedi Temple Archives podcast, that he brought out old World War II actual film clips of some dogfights out there, and basically did shot for shot with some of these effects and these TIE fighters and the fight that went on. We were talking about it, Michelle and I, as we were watching. We also rewatched the film again, not that we had to either, but we love the Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, but how fun would it have been if also to have had the chance to be in those guns that they have there, the swinging turret guns that they have. You go around, you have the little. That would have been a blast if they had figured out a way to work that out. But anyway, such an interesting scene, and I just think it leads also into many of the effects that we saw throughout this film, and the incredible work by the model makers, and to do stuff that really has never been seen before.
Yeah, I mean and how the shots go from showing them doing figuring out how do I line up, how do I shoot, how do I steer, and then going into the big space and seeing I did hit something or I didn't, and great cinematography back and forth there.
Yeah, no question. Rob, your thoughts?
Yeah, I love the fact that you brought up the footage of the dogfights, because I think that that was certainly a way that Lucas was better able to communicate to his visual effects people exactly what he was looking for. And if there's one thing you find out about George Lucas, it's that he's excellent at giving visual cues for what to do, and maybe not so much with the acting. The ongoing joke with anyone involved with Star Wars is that his direction was always faster and more intense.
Right.
But, you can't argue with the end result in this film. I mean, that dogfight scene, and certainly accentuated by the music of John Williams, that particular cue, one that always sticks in my head. But that dogfight scene, when that is over, you want to cheer.
Yeah.
Right.
They cheer, and you want to cheer.
Yeah,
well, there are many times you want to cheer through this. And many times the first time seeing it, that this is one of those films where the crowd was locked in and cheering at every single thing they saw. It was incredible. And speaking of that, let's get to the attack on the Death Star. And it is such an incredible piece of a film to watch. I mean, yes, John Williams scored, building the drama, all the different attacks. The fact that and I brought this up with Michelle as we were watching it again, the fact that you go from these giant moments of flying through these areas, into the trench, over the Death Star, into, outer space, and then you focus in on all these actors very intimately in their cockpits and see them reacting to what's going on around it, back and forth. It just leads that much more into the drama and made it an absolutely incredible, probably the most incredible, I don't know how long it is, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever time, pieces of film that I've ever seen in my life.
Right. Michelle. Yeah, totally. And you definitely feel like you're kind of transformed into that world with them, and you're doing this with them, and because of, like you say, because of that intimacy and showing their face and what they were doing, and then showing all the surroundings back and forth. I just remember feeling like, gosh, when it was done, I was like, wow,
it wears you out.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gripping your seats. Even this, I've seen it hundreds of times by now.
Right.
To this day, I'm still gripping my seat every time I watch it. Rob, any thoughts on the attack on the Death Star?
No, I was thinking the same thing as we were watching it last night, which is that, it still builds tension. You still kind of catch yourself holding your breath as you're watching it. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. There's a reason why people were jumping up out of their seats and cheering on the first viewing. Maybe not so much in my case because everyone was in their car. But, speaking of being in your car, I live in Michigan and occasionally go over to Detroit for sporting events or whatever. And there's a freeway called the Lodge Freeway that kind of goes into the heart of downtown Detroit. And it is literally a cement trench. It's about 15 to 20 feet below the surrounding neighborhoods, and it's got concrete sides.
Wow.
And every time I drive that stretch of highway, I feel like I'm in the Death Star trench. So I haven't blown up anything yet, thankfully, but it's just something that I think of all the time. It's an iconic movie moment for sure.
Right. Hopefully you have the soundtrack playing. When you go.
Oh, I've always got that on.
Sweet.
Going in full throttle. And so this leads us to what is, to me, the greatest film moment I've ever experienced at any time in my life. And there were some parts of this in Avengers Endgame. There were some great moments that made me cheer, that had the crowd cheering in there. Right. But nothing compares to the film experience I had, spoiler alert, when Han Solo reappears at the last moment to save the day, when you thought he's flown away and is doing his own thing. Out of nowhere comes when Darth Vader has the bead finally on
Right.
Luke as he's getting down to the end of the trench, you get the Yahoo. The crowd went absolutely bananas, and then they makes the shot. The Death Star blows up. It was absolute bedlam the first several times I saw it, and still to this day I still feel that
Right.
throughout me. I will never ever forget it. Michelle, any thoughts?
Oh, same thing. It's just it was such excitement, and again, I'm repeating myself in terms of feeling a part of it, but just feeling elated that yay, and even at first when it was first happening, because there was so much going on, or maybe I just don't process that quickly, but like, did Darth Vader make it or didn't he make it? Oh wait, he's spinning off. What's going to happen next? And,
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Rob, I know you must have thoughts on that moment.
Yeah, I mean, they did such a great job of establishing Han Solo, despite all of his, all the things that he was doing kind of for the greater good, were all supposedly based in his love of money. And, when he departs and takes his payment and kind of takes off, there was no reason to believe that he was coming back. But when he appears in a blaze of glory and takes out the two TIE fighters with Darth Vader and sends Darth Vader kind of spinning off into space, and frees Luke up to take that shot, it was definitely, they'd done a great job of just building the drama. You were like, Luke is in Vader's sights. He's not going to escape. How's this going to pan out? And Han Solo saving the day, just established him as, a different kind of scoundrel, I guess, at that point in time.
By the way, if you're looking out there, if you know the Star Wars shorts that exist that are, I think it's called the Galaxy of Here. I'm blanking on it right at this moment, but there's some Star Wars shorts basically made to kind of teach kids, get them involved in Star Wars and whatever the case may be. But there's a great one out there that shows the moments before this happens where Han and Chewie are kind of deciding, or should they go back or not.
Oh, wow.
And it really is a great short, and you should go check it out. Rob, I know you remember the name. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name right now.
Yeah, it's Galaxy of Adventures. I just had to verify it too, because they've got a couple of different cartoon series, but the current one is Galaxy of Adventures.
Yeah, they are lots of great shorts. If you have kids that aren't really entrenched in Star Wars yet, go check these out. They're perfect for that. They're only about 60, 90 seconds, 2 minutes long. So they're perfect for short attention span, but they really...
You could have just said me.
Yeah, exactly.
We thought that. No, I'm just kidding.
But it really is fun to see how this kind of the thought process kind of developed and going into it. It was kind of an interesting thing. So, moving on from there, of course, there's the award ceremony where they all march in, or not they all, but Han and Luke and Chewie march in, and they get the medals from Princess Leia, and we see R2 back to full strength after being scared that he got blown up or whatever. And it's just a wonderful, thrilling way to, finish this film, in many regards.
Yeah.
Again, more with John Williams' score, and just a perfect way to wrap it up.
Right. It was like the real fairy tale ending, and you had the princess there to make it all tied up nicely with a bow. So.
Yeah. You have any thoughts on that, Rob?
Well, I mean, and it was the perfect ending for this particular film in the sense that, he knew he was going to get to make this. Although, again, I would argue that there were any number of times in the making of this film that it looked like it may not get made.
Sure.
But, the intent was always to have this, if it was going to be successful and potentially open the door for him to tell the other stories that he wanted to tell, the other chapters that he had kind of outlined at that point. It was going to have to be something where this film ended on a high note, and we'll get into next month when we talk about Empire, the kind of twist with that film. But it certainly succeeded in having everyone walk out or float out of the theater kind of on cloud nine, having delivered an awesome story and really uplifting ending.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, let's get to what really made this movie. And yes, there was so many aspects of it, and I know you've talked about it already, Rob, but John Williams' soundtrack is absolutely incredible. And really, this movie would not be anywhere as good as it was if it were not for it. I mean, every moment is the tone of it is perfect, and it shouldn't surprise us from John Williams. We've seen him do it for so many films, even before this movie even came out. We saw something I think recently that was talking about him writing the theme for Jaws.
Right.
And, he just kind of played a little doot doot you know, on the in the piano. He's
Right.
like, and Steven Spielberg is like, what have I done? You know, I'm having do be you know, this giant shark. No, John Williams knew exactly what he's doing, and he knew with obviously cues as Rob has brought up before from George Lucas, but he knew exactly what he was doing, and it is a masterpiece. Throughout these films, his score, it makes these films, and I think it really shines in this one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, what's really powerful by his score is how much he captures the essence of the character. You know, it's not just like, okay, there's some music in the background and it kind of, you know, gives you some of the sense of how you should feel going into that scene, but on from his perspective, or from the way he's done this, it's more, I'm sharing with you the character and the emotion this character is going through right now. And that's what I think made it also very different than most scores that you would think about in a movie.
Yeah. Rob, I know you have more comments on the score for sure.
You know, I think certainly John Williams is the maestro and a master of his craft. But I also think that you need to give some credit to George Lucas with the way the music was developed within Star Wars, because the way that that they kind of advise the composer on what they're going for with given scenes is they will lay in what they call temp tracks that are what they use during the initial scoring session with the composer to kind of give them an idea of what feelings they're trying to evoke and kind of what notes they're trying to hit. And so then the composer's job is to, you know, take and create something that's going to evoke the same feelings as that temp track, but kind of, you know, stand on its own. And the two things that I would say Lucas is a master at in terms of his filmmaking, one would certainly be his ability to, you know, create these ideas and these visuals that are what drive everyone to put together the movie that he's looking for. But also he clearly had some talent in trying to come up with music that was going to fit and inform the fans on, you know, what emotions they should be feeling at any given point in time. And he, by all accounts, had an incredible working relationship with John Williams, and that working relationship is really, you know, a huge part of how John Williams was able to craft the themes that we know today and that really evoke the things that Lucas was going for with this film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. They teamed up together masterfully, and you know, the London Symphony Orchestra played it so well. You know,
Right.
the score written by John Williams, it was just so good. And the other aspect I want to get into is just the effects alone, because I don't think people who, maybe if you weren't born when we were born, when we saw this film, realize that what a leap this was,
Right.
special effects wise, and how much so many of those effects are still in use today. And I mean, because, you know, nowadays there's so much CG and so many different things you can do. I mean, everything pretty much had to be a practical effect during that time. And it was incredible, the things that they developed, and new technology, new ways of shooting things, new thoughts, and all the model making, all the things they had to do to create it. It's incredible to look back on. And it was, like I said, it was at 1977, you know, 40 plus years ago.
Right.
It was such a leap ahead. You know, you talk about, like, I'm just going to compare it to the Beatles and
Right.
Sgt. Pepper's, and how much the people thought that was such a leap ahead in music. This was kind of that leap ahead
Right.
in as far as you know, visual effects. It's incredible, and a lot of them, again, like I say, still stand up today.
Yeah, and like I said at the very beginning here, is that, you know, it was really fun to be in the theater to see that, you know, as that. You know, I know people can see it now or see it at home, but to see it as being so new and so different at that time was thrilling.
Mm-hmm. Rob, any thoughts on the effects?
Well, I think the biggest compliment you can give to them is so many of them still stand up today. I mean, when I was commenting on it as we were watching it last night, that you're sitting here 42 years later watching this film,
Mm-hmm.
and again, there are things that certainly could have been done better if they were shooting it today, but
Right.
there's certainly nothing about the effects within the film that take away from the enjoyment or take away from the story. And you know, if anything, you know, as we talked about, some of the things that were added in kind of after the fact by Lucas really didn't even need to be added in to improve the feeling of the story. So, and the interesting thing about the special effects is that when Lucas had come back from shooting the film in England back in, I think it was August of 1976, when he came back to ILM to kind of see where they were at with the special effects. His ILM effects group, had about 45 people employed. They had 360 shots to do, and they only had one shot finished. And they'd blown through half their budget. Wow. So again, when you talk about the fact that this movie at any number of places could have just totally fallen apart, it's a miracle that, in that short period of time, basically less than a year, they had 9 months roughly to finish it before the film went live. And in the roughly 2 years that he'd been, creating the drafts and doing the filming, they'd only managed to get one shot together. It's just a miracle.
Yeah.
And I love the effects. I mean, I can still watch the film today without anything being taken away.
Right. Completely agree with that. Totally. Every moment of it. It's always incredible to me watching it and thinking that this was done 42 years ago when they just weren't making movies like this in that time. So the critical reception for this film, Rotten Tomatoes retroactively looked at it because Rotten Tomatoes obviously didn't exist in 1977, but they indicated it was a 93% approval rating based on 117 reviews with an overall rating of 8.73 out of 10. Pretty strong. Yeah. The film was met with critical acclaim upon its release. In his 1977 review, Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times called the film, quote, an out-of-body experience, end quote. Compared its special effects to those of 2001: A Space Odyssey, which I've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey. Great effects for its time. Right. Star Wars blew it away, in my opinion. And opined that the true strength of the film was, quote, pure narrative, end quote. Vincent Canby of the New York Times called the film, quote, the movie that's going to entertain a lot of contemporary folk who have a soft spot for the virtually ritualized manners of comic book adventure, end quote, okay. A.D. Murphy of Variety described the film as, quote, magnificent, end quote, and said George Lucas has succeeded in his attempt to create, quote, the biggest possible adventure fantasy based on serials and other action epics from his childhood. So critical acclaim, which deservedly so. I mean, it was like something that no one had really ever seen. I'm shocked that there was 7% of reviews that were bad for it because it was amazing. I mean, I know there's always somebody has to be on the other side of things, you know, but it's just an incredible film.
Right. Yeah. And I agree. I don't think I can add to that. I think that because it was so revolutionary at that moment that it just captured everybody.
Rob, any thoughts on that at all?
I love it.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Again, there's a million things I could say about it. I can't argue with any of the critical reception. Again, it's not even about any of the technical aspects of it. It is just a movie that is about how it makes you feel. And this film, it makes you laugh, it makes you tense, it makes you cheer, it makes, you basically go run the gambit of emotions. And I think that's really what a great movie does.
I totally agree on that. So Star Wars was nominated for 11 Academy Awards, won 6 competitive Academy Awards at the 50th Annual Academy Awards. Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, Best Original Score, Best Sound, and Best Visual Effects. A special achievement for sound effects editing went to sound designer Ben Burt, and a Scientific and Engineering Award went to John Dykstra for the development of the Dykstra Flex camera, along with a couple of the people that kind of helped him develop that. Additional nominations included Alec Guinness for Best Actor in a Supporting Role, which was the only major acting nomination that they ever received. I was reading this and I swore I've gone 40 years thinking that Alec Guinness won that award, but no, he did not win it. He was just nominated for it. That went to Jason Robards for Julia. George Lucas was nominated for Best Original Screenplay, Best Director, and the film was nominated for Best Picture and lost. And I will always despise this film because of the fact that it lost to it for Woody Allen's Annie Hall won the film that year. I've seen Annie Hall. It's fine. It is no Star Wars, my friends.
No, but it probably just captured more of the voting audience of the Academy.
Well, yeah, it took so long before any of these films like this even made a real dent in any of the major Academy Awards, and they still to this day suffer from that a little bit. They don't get some of what they deserve in these award shows. Rob, any thoughts on that?
Again, I think the biggest thing that it was up against at that time is that it just wasn't the type of film that typically did well, and the fact that it won as many awards as it did was just a complete fluke, I guess, at that point in time. But it certainly deserved to win far more. I think Alec Guinness certainly deserved more recognition for his work in the film. And he certainly brought that gravitas to the cast for sure.
Right.
Yes. As far as the box office, Star Wars remains one of the most financially successful films of all time. The film opened on a Wednesday in 32 theaters, expanding to 43 screens on the Friday and earning $2,556,418 in its first 6 days to the end of Memorial Day weekend. That would be $10.6 million in 2018, anyways, when this was computed, whatever you want to call it. It gradually added screens, building up to $7 million weekends, and it entered wide release. That would be $28.9 million in 2018 dollars. It replaced Jaws as the highest earning film in North America just 6 months into its release. Yes, this is back in the day when movies would be out for 6 months in the theater because there was no video release, at that time. Eventually earning over $220 million during its initial theatrical run. That's $910 million in 2018 dollars. Remember, there's a lot fewer theaters during this time.
Yeah.
You don't get 4,000 theaters that you can put it in during that time. So it's tough to make that kind of money. Star Wars entered international release towards the end of the year, and in 1978 added the worldwide record to its domestic one, earning $410 million in total. That's $1.699 billion in 2018 dollars total. It was re-released theatrically in 78, 79, 81, 82, and of course what we just talked about, the special edition when they made all the changes in 1997. In the total, the film has earned $775,398,007 worldwide dollars, including $469,998 million and $7 in North America alone. Adjusted for inflation, it has earned over $2.5 billion worldwide. So one of the biggest films of all time, adjusted for now. As a matter of fact, I believe it's the third highest now after Avengers Endgame passed by it of all time. Just incredible. And, like I said, most of this was from word of mouth. It was not a widely publicized film. I mean, gradually it did get that way, but to begin with, a lot of this was just people saying, look, I saw this film. It's amazing. You have to go see it. And then people going and seeing it over and over and over again.
Right. And it really changed the world of movie merchandising for sure.
Oh, yeah.
It really led the pathway for that to really blossom.
Yeah, we're not even getting into the millions and billions of dollars that has been made from Star Wars merchandising from this film.
Just by Rob alone.
Just by Rob alone, yes.
Star Wars toys didn't last very long in my house. I was maybe too destructive as a child. But, and the interesting thing is I've never been like a huge Star Wars collector per se, but I've always loved the films. And in regards to, Michelle's comment about the merchandise, I mean, that was kind of one of the masterful things that Lucas did with this film. It's something that most of the film production companies didn't care so much about, especially with a film like this. And he saw the potential there. And it's really one of the huge things that allowed him to be so much more independent with the later films that he made, was that he had basically had exclusive rights to all of the commercial production of all the toys, etc. So that was very cool. But, again, you can't argue with any of the decisions he made on this particular film, and the financial success of this particular film was really realized more by by Fox And it's interesting. One of the other things that really doesn't show up in the numbers is that as a result of the way that this movie did when it came out, Alan Ladd Jr., who was the executive that had supported him and really one of the primary reasons why this film got made, his salary actually tripled as a result of this. So certainly well deserved that he was one of the few people willing to stick his neck out for Lucas, and he was rewarded accordingly.
Awesome.
Yeah. By the way, I want to, before you move on too much farther on this, I need to go back to I'm not much of a Star Wars collector per se, Rob says. The guy who has like 18 lightsabers is saying that he's
come on, it's only 4. Or 3, sorry.
That's until we get to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. We'll see what happens after that.
I was already adding that.
Yeah.
So my question is, though, when the next Star Wars movie came out, who was the driver there in getting to the theater? Was it you or your dad?
It would have still had to. It would still had to have been my parents. I was probably only. I was 7 at that point. So wasn't quite able to drive yet. Although had they not been willing to take me, I might have figured it out.
Or at least insisted.
Right.
So let's get on. Let's get on to some fun facts before we close out our Star Wars Remembered series. Rob, I know you've got some fun facts.
One of the really fun ones, again, this is from Rensler's book on the making of Star Wars, but at the time that the movie got released, actually on its release date of May 25th of 1977, Lucas was actually still working on finishing some of the audio mixes for other editions of the film, and his wife was doing some editing work on the movie New York, New York, and she would work all day, and he was kind of working overnight, so they would meet up in the morning and kind of have a meal together so they could spend some time together. And on that particular day, they met up at the Hamburger Hamlet over on Hollywood Boulevard, which is right across the street from Grauman's Chinese Theater. And they were kind of in the back of that locale having their lunch, and Lucas looks out the front window and he sees this huge crowd in front of the theater, limos pulling up, etc. And he's thinking, oh, someone must be premiering a movie. And he never expected that it was Star Wars because it wasn't set to play Grauman's Chinese Theater. But due to some issues with William Friedkin's movie Sorcerer, which was supposed to premiere there, they actually put Star Wars in. And this was kind of right before he left to go on that vacation that you alluded to earlier with Spielberg, where they kind of came up with the idea for Indiana Jones. But, again, even he was not expecting this film to be the success that it was. And he was as shocked as anybody by the fact that not only was it successful, it was, a blockbuster of the first magnitude.
By the way, I'm always proud to brag that I am one of the ones lucky enough that I saw Star Wars in its initial release in Grauman's Chinese Theater at one point, because I was living in the LA area during that time. So yes, I'm very much bragging about that.
Nice.
That is incredibly cool.
It's like, that's why I brag about it, because it is incredibly cool. I feel so blessed to have gotten that opportunity during my lifetime. So
Yeah, in terms of some of the other stuff, first and foremost, it's really interesting because Lucas was super depressed after they had finished filming because he didn't really feel like they'd gotten the shots that he wanted. And what you see in that movie is essentially every last frame of film that was usable was put into the film. He had all kinds of issues that he dealt with. There were sandstorms when they were filming. Right. He had hired an editor that ended up doing work that wasn't what he had envisioned. So he ended up kind of having to edit the film with himself and his wife and a couple other editors to get it out on time. Certainly the special effects issues that we talked about. So many things stacked against this being successful. And the scene where the Tusken Raider is attacking Luke with his gaffy stick, right. The terror on Luke's face in that scene is completely real because the stunt director, who is the one in the Tusken Raider helmet, couldn't see anything. So he's, attacking Luke with the gaffy stick, and Luke is literally, or Mark Hamill is literally afraid for his life in that particular scene. So there were so many cool little stories like that. If anyone's interested in learning more about this, I would certainly recommend Rensler's book. And, just to see what went into this. It is a miracle that it was made, and it was a miracle that it was the success that it was. And I couldn't imagine the last 42 years of my life without something like Star Wars in it.
Right. Yeah, that's Absolutely. For sure. That's for sure. I just have a couple quick fun facts here that I want to get to that I found interesting. In 2013, Star Wars was dubbed into Navajo. making it the first major motion picture translated into a Native American language. I thought that was kind of interesting. Again, this is from the internet, okay? I know everything on the internet is true, but just in case I do flub up on any of these, just let you know. 20th Century Fox, we've talked about how this came out of nowhere.
Right.
Well, they were caught off guard as well by the film success. They had a lab working around the clock to strike up new 35 millimeter and 70 millimeter prints to get to these theaters as more and more they were requesting this film come in as it became so popular. Another interesting thing, in early drafts of the film, R2-D2 actually spoke in English.
Oh, wow.
And apparently he had a bit of a foul language. Like, he was not timid about the things he would say there. So apparently they have obviously changed that to where it's just, bleeps and bloops and whatever else now. But you can still see apparently some of C-3PO's actions to some of the things that R2-D2 said as he go through it. And finally, let me see. I think I just have one more thing here. Han shot first. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes.
We all knew that.
That's right. That's right.
So I think we'll just wrap this up with quickly the legacy of this. I think it's very simple. Our worlds would be so much different if Star Wars never existed. If this film didn't exist. I know my life. I am such a big Star Wars fan. I don't know what would be so different about our lives, Michelle's life, mine. It's incredible to think about a world without Star Wars in it. Rob, I know you don't even have a podcast, or at least it's very different if there's no Star Wars out there. And we might, who knows, we may not even have a podcast if no Star Wars existed.
We may not have ever met if it weren't for Star Wars. It was kind of Star Wars that drew us together in the first place, and we got a friendship to show for it. So I'll always be thankful for that.
Definitely, no question about that. Any other thoughts on the legacy of the film?
Well, just that how much it touched so many people in the world, and because of the legacy, because it continues on, and that kids now are growing up with their ability to see the growth of this, and it's just an amazing adventure.
Yeah. Rob, any other thoughts on the legacy?
Well, the thing that I don't know that people realize is that the true legacy of this film, apart from Star Wars and everything surrounding Star Wars, is the fact that it brought ILM to the table. It brought Skywalker Sound to the table. It created all of these technologies that have been used across the board.
Created Pixar
wouldn't exist if it weren't for Star Wars. That was an endeavor that was part of ILM that ended up later being sold to Disney. So much of what is pop culture and kind of in the wheelhouse is films today and entertainment today is there because of Star Wars and the work that Lucas had done in creating that. So I know that there's a lot of people who have issue with George Lucas and the prequels and all these other things, but there has been, without a doubt, so much more good that have come out of these films in terms of entertainment and culture today that I really don't think you can argue with anything that was done.
Completely agree. We've talked about at the top of the show how we're heading out to the D23 Expo 2019 here in just a few days. And, there's going to be so much of the content wrapped around that is going to be Star Wars based. Some of the stuff we're most looking forward to. Rob, we were just talking about going to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge here for your first visit here coming up in just a few weeks. How exciting that is. How many movie franchises? There are great movie franchises out there, but how many can put out this kind of content, but then also have something like Star Wars Celebration, that's coming out. We just had it earlier this year. We got it coming next year in Anaheim, and how big a convention that is. And that is just from this, and the start of this all was this film. It's the impact of this film. We can never really fully grasp it, but
and the charity work. You've got organizations like the Rebel Legion and the Mandalorian Mercs and the 501st, and they do all this amazing charity work. So there's so much good that has come out of this that's separate from the movies, and it's just all a credit to the work that the fans do and the inspiration that Lucas had given. We've talked about the fact before that the merger of Lucasfilm and Disney is really ideal because you're talking about two master storytellers in Walt Disney and George Lucas, and they really belong together.
Absolutely.
I completely agree, and we can't wait to see where we're going forward, and we're going to find out here in just a few more days what's to come. Hopefully, at least a few things what's to come, and hoping for that Obi-Wan series that's being rumored. hoping.
You're here.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's our look back at Star Wars. Well, Star Wars, but yes, eventually Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. And I'm sure if you all have thoughts on when you first saw it and how you enjoyed this film, please contact us and let us know your thoughts on this film. And Rob, thanks again for joining us. We love having you on for so many episodes, but definitely the Star Wars Remembered series. Yeah. And definitely for those of you who enjoy this series, please go check out the Jedi Temple Archives podcast. It is a wonderful, wonderful show. Rob, please tell our listeners how they can follow you on social media as well.
Yeah, basically our show is available anywhere you get your podcast. If you happen to listen to your podcast on a platform and you can't find the Jedi Temple Archives podcast, drop me a line at jtapodcast@gmail.com and let me know, and I will certainly make sure that we get it out there. But right now, I mean, we're on Apple, or we're on iTunes, we're on Google Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Stitcher, and any number of other locations. If you want to get a hold of us on social media, we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest at JTA Podcast. And we certainly do a lot of kind of back and forth with fans and friends of the podcast out on Twitter. So that's usually the best place to reach us, unless you're trying to get a hold of us via email.
Yeah, it's really a great show. Check it out. Give him a follow. He's a lot of fun on social media as well. It really is a wonderful show, and it covers a lot of aspects that Star Wars that maybe you don't know a lot about, but it doesn't do it in a demeaning way to the listener, which is always nice.
Right.
What did you say, Michelle?
No, I said it's awesome.
No, what you're supposed to say is it doesn't make you feel like a jerk.
Michelle gave us our slogan, so we'll always be thankful for that. And hopefully I can get you guys on here soon. We'll do an episode on droids.
Yeah,
I heard a little rumor that Michelle may want to have a little bit of information, a little weigh in on that.
Oh, she's excited for that one once we can finally put the details together and make that all happen. But yes, I appear regularly on the Jedi Temple Archives podcast. Michelle has shown up a couple times, but whether we're on there or not, it's a great show. Absolutely. Every single episode. So Rob, thanks again for joining us, and we'll look forward to next month going into episode 5. That's right. Empire Strikes Back.
I'm going to have to start prepping for that now.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Thanks again, Rob.
You bet. Thank you guys for having me on.
So thanks again to our amazing friend, Rob LeBerry from the Jedi Temple Archives podcast. It is a great show. You should definitely check it out. It is the Star Wars podcast that doesn't make you feel like a jerk.
Oh, man.
And Michelle is looking for some sort of residuals for that tagline, which has been adopted by the show. But it is true. And that's why it's great, is because even though it's a funny line, it is very true about the Jedi Temple Archives podcast.
Well, it's definitely very true that that Rob is such a great expert. And yet when he's sharing his knowledge, it comes across in a very, very familiar, very comfortable way.
Yeah, it doesn't make you feel like if you don't understand or don't know a lot of the details behind Star Wars, maybe you've just watched the films or whatever the case may be. It doesn't make you feel like, well, you should know all this other stuff that's in the books and the comics and the
that it goes
animated
saying.
Right. That's why it doesn't make you feel like a jerk. It makes you feel like, okay, that's fine. I'm here to learn. Please, teach me about all these different things. And it does provide much more depth into a lot of these Star Wars films and the Star Wars universe itself, including Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which we know is opening up for the annual pass holder previews this week. And then, of course, in just a couple weeks from now, it's going to open up for the general public. And that's so exciting. And we're excited for everybody who's getting out there and getting to experience it coming up here in the next several weeks.
Yes. I mean, we know how fun it is. And for those of you who have experienced it, we've loved seeing a lot of the things on social media about it. I mean, even having some of the comparisons and things with Disneyland Resort. So that's been awesome.
It has been awesome. We love seeing all of it and hearing all the great things you have to say about it, since we've been lucky enough to experience it ourselves. Now we're so excited for all of you to go out there and check it out. But let's move on now. We never get through any week without giving you the Disney stories of the week. And this week is no different. We have so many Disney stories and we want to get to a few of them. And we're going to start with, there's a new ticket option coming to the Walt Disney World Resort that could be perfect for those of you who believe in the maybe late to bed, late to rise. Not exactly what I do, but I totally get it for those of you who do. So this is straight from the Disney Parks blog. The new Midday Magic ticket, which is available now, is a great value for families to take in the unsurpassed fun across our 4 theme parks. Tickets are valid for admission after 12 p.m. and were designed with your flexibility in mind. Again, this is coming straight from the Disney Parks blog, so if it reads like a brochure, it pretty much is. The tickets may be used at any of the 4 theme parks, allowing you to catch a parade, enjoy a meal, experience your favorite attractions, and then get ready for wondrous nighttime shows. It's really cool for those. I mean, like sometimes we struggle a little bit when we go out there, at least for the first few days, coming from the West Coast to the East Coast, because we're on a different time,
right?
So to try and get out there for rope drop or whatever, it can be a struggle,
difficult for sure, right?
So maybe if you have that, whether you are from a different time zone or whether you just don't like to move so quickly in the morning, this might be great for you. Or if you just like to leisurely enjoy some breakfast, maybe do a few things, get together, and then make it out, and then you like to go to the end till fireworks and beyond, this may be perfect for you.
Yeah, I think it's a great addition to for them to have this option. And I do, like you're saying, there's so many reasons why planning to go in later in the day is something that fits some people's schedules. And like you said, for us, and I've always been a late night person too, so I'm really happy they're doing this.
Yeah. So here's the deal with it. These are for 2, 3, and 4 day tickets. Midday Magic tickets is what they're called, and they're available for use on or before December 15th of 2019. Here's the prices. For the 2-day ticket, starts at $88 a day plus tax, which will be a total out to $176 total plus tax. For the 3-day ticket, it starts from $84 a day plus tax, which totals out to $252 total plus tax. And for a 4-day ticket, it starts at $79 a day plus tax, which totals again to $316 plus tax. Now, these are subject to change depending. There are some busier days where the price may be a little bit more. There are some days where actually it's a little bit cheaper than that. So you'll want to look on the website to find that out. Tickets are valid for 1 theme park per day. So be sure you know that you're not going to be able to park hop. Prices are for ages 10 years and older. And like I said, the prices vary depending on your date. The 3-day ticket expires 5 days after the selected start date. The 2-day expires 4 days after your selected start date. And the 4-day ticket expires 7 days after the selected start date. So it doesn't mean that you have to go 4 days in a row or 3 days in a row. So just so you know, and maybe if there's a day where you want to get into the parks earlier, you could purchase a ticket that gets you in. That's a more of a full price ticket. Right. And then you can balance it out the other days with some of the other tickets. So it's all whatever is best for you.
It really makes sense out there because there are a lot of groups that do conventions and seminars and things like that. So you could have people who are coming out and may only have like late afternoon and evening to go into the parks. And here's a great option that, provides some cost savings to do that.
Right. So you might want to take a look at that, see if it's right for you. And again, it's not right for everybody. Some people like to get up and they will go first thing in the morning. They want to be out there for rope drop. Some will do rope drop to fireworks and beyond. But if it's some of you that like to maybe take your morning at a little more leisurely pace, this might be the best way to approach it. It is a discounted ticket price for you.
Right.
Nice. So let's move on, but we'll stay at the Walt Disney World Resort. And there is some news coming out that some of our 4-legged friends are getting a fresh new home at the Walt Disney World Resort.
Nice.
Yes. This again from the Disney Parks blog. The equine residents of Disney's Fort Wilderness Resort and Campground at both the Pony Farm and the Tri-Circle D Ranch are set to receive a beautiful new barn.
Nice.
Yeah, I saw they have some concept art of it. It looks spectacular. That's so great for them. I'm sure it's going to look fantastic once it's done. Imagineers have redesigned the Tri-Circle D Ranch. I want to say Triple D Ranch or something along those lines.
Tri-State area.
Okay, Doofenshmirtz. which will offer a modern stable and updated outdoor spaces and facilities for the happiest horses on earth. The new ranch will maintain the history and spirit of the original Tri-Circle D, welcoming guests to explore exhibits of classic Disney equestrian artifacts, some of which date back to the 1950s.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's one of those gems that people really don't either know about or take the time to appreciate and experience. We have done it out there and just walking around and just seeing, the grounds and the horses and, like you said, the artifacts. It's really a fun treat.
Right. Now, you're not going to be able to visit it after, probably when you're listening to this, because it's Monday that they're starting this, August 19th. But once it does reopen and you get the chance, it's just past, if you go to Fort Wilderness, and then there's the Trails End restaurant there, and then the Hoop-de-Doo Review, and just past that is where a lot of the animal areas are, and that is where the new barn is going to be as well. So like I said, it is closing on Monday, August 19th. The Draft House Barn and the Pony Farm will be inaccessible for guests until the new barn debuts, which is scheduled to debut in spring of 2020. So that'll be great. However, you can still enjoy the pony rides at the Trailblaze Corral, which is near the campground's entrance. That's on the other side of Fort Wilderness, where if you're driving into it, where you would go to. And you still can do the trail rides and the pony rides there if you're either visiting the resort, or if you're visiting. You don't need to be staying at Fort Wilderness to enjoy those. You just need to schedule it ahead of time, and you can go.
Sure.
And I'm sure there are some walk-ups as well.
Right.
So take advantage of that. But it's so great that they're going to be having this brand new barn. I'm excited to see it once it gets done.
Yeah.
It's one of our favorite spots in all of the Walt Disney World Resort. And we're excited to see this all come to fruition.
Definitely.
Right. Absolutely. And I said absolutely this time. So I'm putting one in the jar. Moving on, we now know the dates that you'll have your chance to become a member of the Disney Parks Moms Panel. Yes, it's opening up once again. They do this every single year. This straight from a Disney Parks press release. Disney Destinations is looking for experienced Disney Parks guests to apply for the 2020 Disney Parks Moms Panel, an online question and answer forum for planning Disney vacations. Each year for the past decade, thousands of hopeful candidates apply to become part of this coveted panel to help future visitors plan their most magical Disney getaways. This year, the application window opens up on Thursday, September 5th at noon Eastern Daylight Time and runs through Thursday, September 12th, 2019 at noon Eastern Daylight Time. And you can apply online at momspanelsearch.com. Again, that's momspanelsearch.com.
And there's a lot of groups out there in social media that, can share some information of people who have gone through, the application process in the past. Some people who have actually been selected for that. Like you said, that really coveted position. So there is a lot of support out there that you can seek out if you're really considering to apply. Right.
If you're curious about it at all, we did an episode that pretty much will give you all the details of how it laid out. We did it about a year ago. I actually don't know the number of episodes, but if you want to look back at all our episodes, it kind of laid out the whole entire process for you so you can kind of know exactly how it works.
That was when we were like real newbies. I wonder how
we sound in that episode.
Inexperienced we sounded.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, not the content. The content was, I'm sure, spot on, but how we came out.
Right. Well, there are probably still some people say you still sound like newbies.
That's true.
But anyway, if you want to know about the Disney Parks Moms Panel, you can listen to that episode. But also, just to give you a few details on it, it is a group of people that are volunteers, essentially. They go online and you answer people's questions.
Right. And if you're really interested, if you haven't done it before and you want to find out more details, we would encourage you to join some of the mom panel groups, whether it be on Facebook. That's pretty much the predominant one, the best place that you can get that. And people really cheer each other on throughout the process. And, it's pretty cool if you become, and you don't have to be a mom.
Right.
There's grandparents. Yeah. And just be a resource for people. I know a lot of us in the Disney community that are on podcasts, vlogs, love the the idea of sharing our passion for Disney, and this is another outlet for them.
Right. It's actually, we went through the process, and it's actually how we met. You heard him earlier. Rob LeBerry from the Jedi Temple Archives podcast was going through the Moms panel process and being part of this Facebook group. We've made some great friends from it. There are some wonderful people a part of it, including the people that actually make it through. It's an interesting process. You go through several different legs. There's the initial leg. If you make it through that, you can go to another leg and then a third leg, and then they finally pick who goes.
Right.
It's a fascinating process. However, I'm going to warn you ahead of time, when you don't make it, it can be heartbreaking too. So, be prepared for that, but it also is fun. And there are, like Michelle said, some very encouraging people out there on some of these social media groups.
Right. And on the flip side, there are some people who say sometimes being in those, following along in those social media groups can actually make it more difficult if you don't make it through, because then you're hearing about all the joy of somebody who has made it through, like you said, the first application level, and then I think you do a video next.
The video level next. More questions and video.
Yeah, right.
And then the final one is an interview.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, it's however you all roll. If you're interested in doing that, if you want to follow along with some people, at least through the process of application and, or not.
Right. It's completely up to you, but it is an interesting way to go about it. And if you are somebody who loves passing along information to people, helping people with plan their Disney trips, and you have the time on your hands to do it, I highly encourage it, because these are every one of these Moms panelists, we've met many of them, or at least know them socially on social media, and we've been through many prospective ones that we've known on social media. And some of you out there who are listening, I know that you are prospective panelists, because that's how you came to know about our show, is from us being in those groups.
Sure,
and
right.
so highly encourage you taking advantage of it and giving it a shot.
Right. And if you have any questions for us, feel free to reach out to us at Hyperion Adventures Podcast at gmail.com.
Or on any of the social media outlets.
Right.
And we'll go over those again at the end of the show. Finally, I want just one last story for you, and that's a quick one here. Toy Story 4 crossed the $1 billion mark at the box office this week. That now makes 5 Disney films that have crossed the $1 billion mark this year.
Woo-hoo.
It's incredible. Disney is having an amazing box office year, and they still have a couple big films to come that may surpass that. Frozen 2, possibly. Right. Star Wars almost, Rise of Skywalker almost certainly will. The question is, will it pass $1 billion before we get out of this year and it moves into 2020.
Right.
But it's definitely going to add hundreds of millions, almost certainly, before we get to the end of the year, to whatever the box office total will be. So congratulations again to Toy Story 4 and Pixar, but also to Disney in general.
Yeah.
So that's it for the Disney stories of the week. However, we never leave any show, well, so far, because when we get to our D23 shows, we're probably not going to be doing the Disney stories of the week or the tips of the week. But when we're doing a regular episode, we never leave you without some sort of tip that might help you on your next vacation, your next trip to the parks, whatever it may be, whether it's a Disney cruise, whether you're doing Run Disney, whatever. We try and have some little tidbit that might help you out. And speaking of little tidbits, my little tidbit, Michelle, always has the very best tips.
Gosh.
She is
So
awesome.
funny.
She has the best tips. She's wonderful, and that's why we always have her go first. So let's get right to it. Here is Michelle's tip of the week.
Oh, you're so sweet. So in honor of the 30th anniversary of Little Mermaid, I wanted to share with you all a fun experience that you can have at the Walt Disney World Resort that you might not know about. Or you might. Who knows? Ready?
Ready.
You can attend mermaid school.
Really?
That's right.
Wow.
Right.
I might want to do that.
I know, right? So guests 4 years and up, and they didn't have a limit listed, can take a 1-hour class. And it starts off where you get fitted with a swimmable tail, and then you're led through some fun training activities as you learn how to swim like a mermaid. So what's really neat, they have it in multiple locations. They have it at the Disney Art of Animation, the Caribbean Beach Resort, and the Yacht and Beach Club Resort. The cost of the class is $50 plus tax, and you can make reservations on their reservation line. So 407 WDW Play.
Wow.
I Can you
Very
imagine
cool.
that?
I'm going to put it out there right now. If we pass 1,000 followers on Twitter by the end of this week, before D23 Expo starts, okay, we'll say the middle of this week, I will go be part of Mermaid School.
Nice.
Yeah, we need 200, a little less than 200. If you're going to do that, I will sign up the next trip we're out there, and I will be part of Mermaid School.
Who knows? I was maybe planning to do that for your birthday.
Oh,
For you.
okay. That's exciting.
But anyways, I thought that was fun.
Who doesn't want to see me in a mermaid tail? Yeah, everybody's.
No,
I don't want to see that.
That'd be hilarious in a good way.
Anyway, I think that's awesome. That's fun. How fun. Mermaid School.
Yeah, Mermaid School. So
Cool.
Disney tip.
Love that. Love that very much. That's and Michelle always has the best tips. And she just explained something I didn't even know existed, and now I want to go do it.
Right?
So. Let's move on, and we'll get to my lesser tip. Not nearly as cool as Mermaid School by any stretch of the imagination. I'm going to go back to, since we're just about to get to the D23, I want to talk about one more final tip that we're going to have before we get out to the expo. And that is when you're on the D23 floor, some things you might want to know. And that is very simple. When you're on the D23 floor, keep your eyes open when you're out there. Don't have tunnel vision. Don't just look to get to the next panel or to the next signing or whatever else. You never know what you're going to stumble or who you're going to stumble across when you're on the D23 floor.
Good point.
2 years ago, when we were at D23 Expo 2017, I stumbled across a couple of celebrities while I was out on the floor. Michael Rooker, who you may know as Yondu, was just out there on the floor. It was a random, ran into him. He was out there. I took a great picture of him out there. Of course, like I said, Yondu from Guardians of the Galaxy. He was also on The Walking Dead, if you follow that show at all. I also just stumbled across Yvette Nicole Brown, who you may know from Community, if you watch that show, but she's also a super fan of many other shows and does a lot of hosting of different panels at Comic-Con, and she will be hosting some panels out there
at D23.
Right. I think she's part of the Masquerade panel as far as hosting that or judging that as well. So it's very likely that she will be out there somewhere, and she does roam the floor occasionally, and she's very, very friendly. So keep your eyes open out there. And it's not even about celebrities. You never know who you might see out there, as far as maybe you'll run into a friend you haven't seen in a long time that you didn't even know was coming.
Right.
Maybe you'll see some stuff being handed out for free. There's all sorts of giveaways that aren't necessarily listed on like some of the talent,
That's true.
things. If you keep your eyes open and your ears open, you may get a free little poster or some other little knick-knack giveaway. You'll see some excellent cosplay out there if you keep your eyes open. You just never know. And of course, you also might see some of your favorite vloggers or bloggers because they're going to be out there. And yes, we will be out there too. I don't know if we're your favorite. Hopefully so, since you've listened this far into the show. But you never know. But definitely, when you're out on the floor, take a look around. Keep your eyes open. Enjoy the whole thing. There's the parade, the fan parade that goes on twice a day, every day. Check that out. Just enjoy your time on the floor. You just never know what you might stumble across.
That is an excellent point. It really is. Good, like when you said don't have tunnel vision, that is just so true. Just really take it all in, enjoy it. It's not something that happens all the time, and it's a really fun event, and that's an awesome tip, sweetie.
Thank you, sweetheart. I appreciate that. It is all, of course, the big panels and even the smaller panels is mostly about that, but it's not all about that. It's about a lot of Disney fans getting out there together and having a great time. And, maybe you'll see some old friends, make some new friends. It is going to be a blast, and we can't wait to see you out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I almost
into the jar. We're getting silly now. That's it for this week. Next week, we've already told you all about it. We are going to be at the D23 Expo beginning on Thursday. You'll want to follow along with us on social media. You'll want to listen to all of our episodes. We're going to be doing 4 episodes, one on Thursday evening, Friday evening, Saturday evening, Sunday evening, maybe Monday morning, depending on what we're doing as we wrap up the very last day. But we will have those episodes out for you that are going to kind of wrap up each day's event and what we've seen and what's gone on. And we are in all the major panels. We do have reservations for those. So please follow along with us.
Yeah. And if you have any questions for us, shoot them out to us so we can check out on things or give you updates on things that we might not have thought about.
Right. Absolutely. And I got me. And get out there on the floor and take a look for us. If you're not going to be out there, unfortunately, I'm sorry, we're going to miss you while you're out there, but you can follow along with us on social media, on Twitter at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Hyperion Adventures Podcast. And just as Michelle said, you can always email us at any time at HyperionAdventuresPodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. See, I caught myself.
Yes.
I was almost ready to say it.
Anyway, we appreciate you joined us today. Join us in the future, and especially for this special mini-series that we're going to be doing. Best place to find it is on our website, HyperionAdventuresPodcast.com. You can also subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartMedia. We're all over the place. And if there is a place where you normally listen to podcasts that you can't find us, let us know because we want to get on that site.
And we appreciate you listening now. And we look forward to having some, like you said, honey, having some special daily report outs. This is going to be an exciting adventure for us that we haven't done that before. So
it's going to be a lot of fun, and we look forward to having you join along with us, either out there on the floor or along at home. So that's it for this week. Thank you for listening to the Hyperion Adventures podcast. We look forward to sharing some time with you again at D23 Expo 2019. But until that time, I'm Tom.
I'm Michelle.
And we hope that you have a magical week.